You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, there are things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. As always, the Chris Voss Show is a family that loves you but doesn't judge you. At least not as harshly as your mother-in-law, because, you know, she never really liked you anyway. She wanted her to marry Bob. But the great thing is, if you listen to the Chris Voss Show, you're going to get smarter, better, and you'll probably make more money. And maybe it'll make her happy. Or, you know, just for the show, she needs more laughter and enjoyment in her life, obviously. That or you're her laughter and enjoyment. But replace her with the Chris Voss Show. Tell them to go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss1, the TikTok, and all those crazy places on the internet. We have a returning guest. Mark W. Sutton joins us on the show. He wrote, How Democrats Can Win Back Men, Why Understanding Voters and Their Issues is Vital for Democrat Victory. We had him on the show July 17th, 2024, and now we are post-mortem on the election. It is almost a week later, I guess. It's Monday, a week after the Tuesday election. So we're almost there. And a lot has been written and said about how Democrats lost horribly, so badly, both men and women in voting. And we wanted to invite him back because we were like, holy shit, we talked to the one guy who had it. We had Professor Andrew Lichtman on the show, who, you know, had his 13 keys of bets. He suffered an embarrassing loss after, I think, 11 or 13 wins, or 11, I think it was 11 calls he made accurately, and suffered a massive loss. So we wanted to have Mark on to do a postmortem.
That's the right word, unfortunately.
We're doing autopsies on the Chris Voss Show. I'm going to have to add it. We have billionaire CEOs, whales, presidents, Pulitzer Prizers, and we do autopsies on the Chris Voss Show. So we're going to have him on the show. You can hear him in the background. His book is entitled How Democrats Can Win Back Men, Why Understanding Male Voters and Their Issues is Vital for Democrat Victory. And we're going to find out how he called it. Welcome to the show. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing okay. I am, that election was a lot to handle, but, it's post-mortem. It's exactly the right word from this one. It was a bloodbath.
Most definitely. So let's start out with a plug. Where can people find you on the .coms, the internet?
Sure. So I have a website called mark-sutton.com. And my book, as you mentioned, is on amzn.to. So if you go to amzn.to, just search Mark W. Sutton, How Democrats Can Win Back Men, they can find my book. And also I'm on Substack, Men in the 2024 Election, which was my whole focus of this book, and my whole last year and a half of my life was this election and how the Democrats needed to do better with men or they're going to lose.
Definitely. You called it. You've been a registered Democrat and an MBA for 35 years. You've been passionate about supporting male well-being for 30. You produce radio content for NPR, Air America Radio, and the Mother Jones Radio Show, and hosted the podcast Liberal Arts with Mark Sutton. You're a gender expert who's appeared on MSNBC, CBS Radio, and served as a guest host for the TV show Men's Net. I didn't even know there was one called Men's Net. Welcome to the show. Give us a 30,000 overview recap for those who didn't see the original episode of what's inside the book.
The first thing I like to look at is when people talk about the gender gap or how men and women have voted for president, I look at the data going back to 1972. And when I put that data together, I did some data analysis on this. I noticed something. I noticed that in every single election, when Democrats have been at minus 8% or better among men, they have won. Mm-hmm. And every time they have been worse than minus 8% among men, they have lost. Now, what we have seen since 1980, since Ronald Reagan ran, there is this, when people talk about the gender gap, what they mean is women are voting more for the Democratic Party and men are voting more for the Republican Party. That has stayed consistent for that 40 years, and in fact has even grown a little bit. And I think that is also a bad thing for our society, because I think it kind of shows how we have this sort of cultural breakdown or this cultural divide going on between men and women, which I don't think is a good thing. But anyway, that's the number, magic. I call that the magic number. And you talked about, there's some other people with their keys to the election. I'm calling this now Sutton's key because it's the one key. If you go back to 1972 at every single election, that number has been true every single time. So you would think, just using common sense, you're losing among this group and you're winning among this group. Let's make sure we don't lose that group by too much. Let's just do a little bit better. I'm not saying you got to win them all, but let's just do something. And the Democrats did the exact opposite. Since I was on your show, I had, certain things I was looking for. Mm-hmm. One of the things, and I'm, a little bit of a policy geek, but I was looking for the Democratic Party national platform. Mm-hmm. And because what I like to do is I do a word count. How much are they talking about men? How much are they talking about women? The word women appears 82 times in that document. The word men, only 4. And of those 4 times that it appears, 3 times are in a men and women statement. And then the 4th time is they made the statement that Trump hired too many men judges, which, was maybe a fair statement. Maybe, that wasn't equitable. That's fine. But there's nothing in there that's supportive of men or boys. And then they're shocked when the men don't vote for them, when they just do, nothing to address them.
Yeah. The emotionalism, arrogance, entitlement, just stunning to look at now. One of the things that I've been watching for a lot of years, especially since 2020, the men's movement started to rise. And men just went, okay, we're sick of giving everybody what they wanted. Everybody said they wanted this, then they want more, then we give them that, then they want more, then we give them that, then they want more, to the point that men are, and this has been called for 20 or 30 years, men are at a crisis point. There's lots of books like yours written about it. Men are struggling. There's fewer men going to college. And the attitude behind a lot of the people in the Democratic Party is women are the future. Men must, it's been a message of scarcity where men must be put down or shoved down the ladder so that women can rise. It's scarcity mentality instead of abundance mentality where, hey, rising tide lifts all boats. And there's been, I've had women say it to my face on this show, women are the future. Can you imagine what a young 8-year-old boy thinks when he hears women are the future? And the problem is men and women's fates are always tied together. Biologically, yep. and the problem with feminism and how it's infected and taken over the Democratic Party to where it's basically the party of feminism. And I've had no problem with it. I've had somewhat of a problem with it for Inkling for a lot of years now. Watching what happened with Hillary Clinton, this is just a double hit for me as far as I'm concerned. I voted for Hillary. I did not want to vote for Hillary. I hated Hillary from the way the Clintons behaved in the thing. It had nothing to do with sex. I just thought she was toxic as fuck and a lying person. But I voted for democracy. I held my nose and voted for democracy. I supported women's rights. I really felt betrayed at the time because women didn't show up for Hillary. They just didn't show up. And, you could probably call part of the men vote there where men were like, hey, we want some jobs back so we can support our families. But men just want to support their families. They just want to pay their bills. We're the people who create families. And when we get money, when we get our shit together, we go start a family. And we're the ones who have to start it. Women don't ask men out. At least not ones that are ones that are going to invest in long-term relationship, marriage, and the future. I'm pushed out of the Democrat Party now. I've left in protest. I'm an independent. There's no way in hell I'd ever vote against the Constitution or democracy. So I'm not going full flip. And for me, it's a protest vote because I want the Democrats to go, we need to wake the fuck up. You read stuff like more Democrats fear the party's image isn't damaged, it's just broken. We spent all this time, and I'm not minimizing LGBTQ rights, transition, people want to transition their sex. Hey, if you're over 18, knock yourself out. I'm not a big fan of the children doing it until they understand what they're doing to their bodies. But, we spent like all this time, and the Republicans spent, I think I just heard this morning, $140 million beating beating Kamala Harris over the head over transgender rights.
Yeah, that one ad that was just everywhere. That ad about in prison. I saw that myself. I don't know how many times. So if I saw it, I mean, everyone saw it.
Yeah. And then what do you think about the machismo vote? I think we said Professor Scott Galloway, which gets about half his shit wrong. I don't know why he talks about stuff he doesn't know about. He talks about dating, and you're like, dude, you haven't been on a date 50 years. But, I mean, he's out of his ass on that. But he called it the machismo or the masculine podcast vote, is what he called it.
Yeah.
And honestly, when you really think about it, I mean, Joe Rogan, 24 hours before the election, the night of, I guess, having Elon Musk. And a lot of people worship Elon Musk. They worship Trump. And a lot of these men who worship other men, and I call men out and say, don't worship other men. Worship yourself. Don't worship other men. And I don't mean that in a narcissistic way. I mean that in a value yourself. I mean, make yourself the center of your universe. Don't give your power to someone else. But they did that. It seems like they went to Trump, they went to Elon Musk, and they worshiped Joe Rogan, and it was just basically the manosphere going, fuck it, we're voting for Trump.
I think, that there's a lot of truth to that. I always like to think of it, there's kind of two aspects of it. There's the imaging part and the messaging part. And you're exactly right. And the imaging part of it, there was just like exactly Hulk Hogan ripping off the T-shirt. And I mean, that tragic event, but that ended up with this historic photograph of when the assassination attempt happened. And it was it almost read like a script. Some people I know thought it was a conspiracy, like fake. I think it was totally 100% real. Somebody else died in that shooting. Yeah. It was 100% real. But the fact that he almost got shot and then stood up and raised his fist and yelled, fight. And then with the flag behind him and the Secret Service and their sunglasses, I mean, you couldn't almost script that. When that moment happened, I was just like, wow, that's going to get a lot of, and they, sure enough, they use that in all their they use that in a lot of commercials and things like that. So there's the imaging side of it, and then there's also the policy side. What are the actual things you're doing for people? And, again, the Democrats did worse than the Republicans on both halves of this. So you're exactly right. Elon Musk, I mean, what's cooler than sending rockets into outer space and being the richest person in the world? I mean, that's a thing that a lot of guys aspire to and can relate to. The crypto thing is very big with guys. So that's, again, a little bit of a substance thing. And, there's also the feeling that I just think the Republicans, focus on men. They talk to men. I talk about in my book, going back to last year, a couple senators, Josh Hawley wrote a book about men and masculinity. Senator Marco Rubio wrote a 40-page report about men. Kellyanne Conway has been a spokesperson for Trump in the past. She came out and talked about how Trump is going to support men and boys just directly. Yep. So you have not only this Musk and, Hulk Hogan and this kind of, imaging, what I like to call imaging masculinity. It's just kind of, Hulk Hogan is not going to have a job in the cabinet, at least I hope not. But, it's just about kind of showing something like that. Whereas, the Democrats, in terms of the content, they focus a lot on women's issues, many of which I support. And, you said you used to be a Democrat and that you left.
I still support those. I still, I think women should have rights, and I think they should have abortion. I also think men should have the right that if they're trapped by a pregnancy they didn't want, they can opt out of it. I'm not sure why women get a chance to do murder, but if a man does it, it's murder. That's not fair. That's not equal. That's not equal.
Exactly. Either parent can opt out of parenthood or neither can. It should be one way or the other.
I've had so many friends that used abortion and used pregnancy as extortion to either get them commit to marriage, or if they didn't commit, then the baby was aborted. And usually the threat of the baby was aborted to them. They called their mother, they called the guy.
Wow.
And they said, if you don't marry me, I'm going to abort your baby. And
wow, that's horrible.
Yeah, most people don't realize abortion is maybe the things for rape and sexual assault and different things like that go on.
Yeah.
That's maybe 5% of abortions. Women use, when I grew up, women took the pill every day. And what's happened with the new generation is they use abortion as birth control. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's definitely skewed the stats, and it's made it's made it an even more bigger thing. So Plan B is included in the abortion stats, from what I understand. And Plan B is a day after pill, yada, yada. I have no problems with it. I'm not against it. But what's really amplified the issue is using it as a thing for Chad chasing and doing this hookup culture that we see. You see online now women doing this hot girl summer thing where they're encouraging each other to run up triple digit body counts over the summer. I mean, it's just and the damage it does to women is well documented. Depression rates go up, divorce rates go up, et cetera, with the numbers of pairs they have. Let's get into, but men are tied to women, so the problem.
Yeah, we're all interconnected.
Yeah.
We're all, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I'm a huge believer in that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then one of the things you said, where men are kind of included in the Democratic Party, and this has been the way for a long time. The language has always been, how can you serve women? So it's, okay, we need you to get out and vote for abortion. Okay, can we get some of our rights? It might be nice if we could, if a father doesn't pay his child support, he goes to jail and loses his driver's license and his livelihood. Can we make it so that if a woman extorts and withholds the children post-divorce, that can be a crime? Because that damages the children. And no one talks about that. No one cares about that. If you look at the numbers of single mother homes and how children come out on the other end versus men, it's a huge disconnect in proportion to things. Anyway, I still support a lot of the stuff in the Democratic Party, but I'm like, you know what? They're just not going to get it. And when I see the hysteria right now that is just making me even more angry and cemented me leaving the Democratic Party, all these women are on TikTok. These far left Democrats, they're on TikTok blaming and shitting on men for everything. They've started a movement called 4B. They're not going to have sex with men, all that sort of stuff. And I'm just like, you've alienated men. They've shown you that they're going to vote with another party, and now you want to cement that. You want to make sure they never come back by just shitting and abusing them more. And all that shitting, I've seen trillions of videos on TikTok about how men are bad, men are garbage, men are, steal from men. There was even a hashtag kill all men that was going for a while. Mm-hmm. And if you typed in hashtag kill all women, that
would
banned.
Not go very well. You'd be banned.
That was banned. You couldn't even use the hashtag or find anything on it. But sure enough, there was a trillion views. There are billions and trillions of video views bashing men on TikTok. And now they're going right back at it, not even realizing they're the ones who drove men away from the party.
Yeah. And this is exactly what I talk about, how men and women are interconnected. And when we see the divide in the gender gap, this is exactly what I'm talking about, how that correlates to in our society, how we're having this male versus female antagonism. And that is really sad. And people often ask me, why did you get into male well-being in the first place? And I usually say two things. One, I just see that men and boys are having a lot of problems. And two, I see how the fact that we're not paying attention to this has created this division in our society. I remember my first day at college, somebody had been into a women's studies class, and like the day before we'd had this great conversation, and then the next day it's like her tone totally had changed in one day. And she was talking about what she just learned at her women's studies class, started pointing at me. Everything in the world was my fault because I was a man. And I thought, oh, whoa, this isn't good. We shouldn't be like pointing fingers at each other for stuff that we didn't do it. In this election, I think a lot of young men, they felt like they've been blamed for everything their whole life, and they're just kind of tired of it. And they grew up with, you mentioned like the whole future is female thing. And, men have caused all the problems of the world, yet they don't get credit. I think there's some revisionist history going back about what male privilege is. I mean, if you look at old historical photos of men from the end of the Civil War who had been like in prison camp, they looked like skeletons. Yeah. For men who were miners who were going, a kilometer underneath the earth in an hour-long, dark elevator ride, all scrunched together to make electricity, and then they die at the age of 25 from black lung disease. I mean, is that male privilege? What part of that is privilege to you? There's this revisionist history. And so I think this sort of stuff has been ginned up And then, this type of conversation happened to me frequently this year. As I have talked about my book, I've worked within the party and also just within the public trying to share this idea, how the Democrats need to do a better job of appealing to male voters. And there's a certain group of far left Democrat, I'd say it's the progressive wing of the Democratic Party typically, often would say, we can't do anything for men until we have abortion and women's issues like secured. Then we can start talking about it. But until then, sit down, shut up, get in the back, and just vote for us. And you know what? It doesn't work for a lot of it. I mean, that's again, like you're like you, I'm like you. I've supported the Democrats for a long time. I'm super frustrated. In fact, I was originally going to call this book "A Man Without a Party" because I was like at that point of leaving. And so I hear exactly what you're saying. And in fact, I know a lot of men. I talk about this right in the introduction to my book. I say I know a lot of men who have been Democrats for a long time who care about women's issues, but they feel so alienated by the complete and total lack of understanding and recognition of men's issues that they either leave the party and vote independent or they switch and go Republican. And so you're one of those who left and went independent. And it's not shocking to me at all. It's not even marginally surprising. Why would you stay if it just told you we don't care about you? So
I mean, I would have stayed. I would have stayed if we would have been like, holy shit. We just created. I mean, you could kind of see it coming down the pike, right? You would see the stats that I like. What's his name, Bernanke or whatever, who runs the board on MSNBC, and then of course they have the magic wall on CNN. But you would see the numbers pre-election, where it was like men were over here on the Republican side, and women were over here, and I'm like, holy fuck, have we created a two-party system that is men versus women? This is going to be fucked up. And I had no idea it was going to be what it was. But now it's very clear. And I'd still be in the Democratic Party, but seeing the hate and the amping up of men and, we're not going to have sex with them. And of course, the people that say they're not going to have sex with you, they're not the people you want to have sex with anyway as a man. I just get so tired of that narrative. But really, it was a lot of the Gen Z vote too. I mean, and I've talked to these Gen Z, these kids, they don't give a fuck about American idealism in the world, the influence that keeps everyone safe at night. They don't understand any of that. They have a shitty education process they were brought up in that was focused on feminism, but also neutering them and emasculating them. And so when men are weak, they go vote for fascists and authoritarians. I've studied fascism and authoritarian like a lot of years. I mean, since I was a kid, one of the first big books I read was The First 1,000 Days. It talked about the rise of Cuba and Castro, and then some of the other shit that we did in South America that we're always up to. We're the reason South America is a fucking mess and people want to come here. We've created our own immigrant crisis. We should just take over the country the way we've behaved. The whole Southern Hemisphere. But it's just crazy. And the other thing is the numbers that this is from, what is this? BBC News. Democrats bet on women showing up. They didn't. They dropped by, I think it was like 10% or something, 10 points.
Yep, exactly. And I don't. Oh, yeah, in terms of how many of them showed, there was a lower voter turnout. Right. You've got the idea of the voter turnout, and then of those who turn out, what percent? So the percent of who actually voted for Democrat went down, and the number of people actually showed up also went down quite a bit. We're still waiting for the 100% final vote tally, so that number might go up a little bit, but it's that's pretty close.
I don't know.
To finish
Democrats suffered a 10-point drop among Latino women while failing to move the needle among non-college educated women at all. They went for Trump's 63 to 35.
Wow.
Her advantage among women overall, around 10 points, fell 4 points short of Joe Biden. And then if you see the states, she fell short of Joe Biden in everything. Like, I don't know if we would have won the election, but if Joe Biden had run, we'd have probably had a better shot at threading the needle. I don't know if it would have done it because this is clearly a protest vote.
I think it was after that debate, though, I think he was, his numbers were low the whole year because I was following it and he was dead in the water. I said he has zero chance to win the whole year up until he left. Then Harris came out. I thought, she's getting it closer. Like she might have a chance. I thought there was a chance that she could win. But obviously, in the end, it wasn't very close.
Yeah. And you just look back on the arrogance of it now of we can win just with women and abortion. We don't need to embrace men. I think she was even invited on Joe Rogan. Holy shit.
Yeah,
That just
and
hit
she
me.
didn't go.
She didn't go. She was invited.
Oh,
Shoot me in the face. I just remembered that. Wow. Yeah.
And then there was that quote from her. Do you remember? So she did this photo op with Michigan Governor Whitmer, and they're in a bar having a beer, and there was a hot mic moment where they had the boom mic on her, and she didn't know she was being recorded. And she said, I really need to make up ground among men, or something like that. That was basically the gist of what she said. And so she said, we're just here doing a photo op for men. And I'm like, you've had all year. And granted, she jumped in after Biden, but she was part of the Biden administration, so she should have been on top of this. You could have talked about men in your DNC conference. You could have talked about men in this. You could have talked to Joe Rogan. You could have done all these things, and you did nothing. And you have a beer with Governor Whitmer, and that's your way of trying to get the male vote at the last second?
Yeah. The thing I heard, I think this was Scott Galloway, Professor Scott Galloway talking. I think I may have lifted this from him. But basically he was saying the Joe Rogan podcast, 55 million men or people. I think he has a large men base. I don't know what the demo is, but all the people who love Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, they see them as masculinity leaders. And since they don't have any, they're devoid of masculinity, they're just like, we'll support anybody. And this is how fascism authoritarian always rises. If you study it, what happens is men's rights go down, women's rights go up, LGBTQ, all these other people go up. And then it reaches the point where men can't start families. And it's really simple. Men aren't sexist. They're not hateful. Men love women. But if they can't, they have a biological paradigm just like women do. They have a thing that tells them, you need to go have kids. You need to start a family. And it's not really built in, but when we get money and successful as men, we start families. And this is an axiom that is natural. When we get money as men, we start a family. When women get money as women, they figure out how to live alone.
Interesting.
I run a dating group of thousands of people. I talk and counsel both women and men on dating, and this is as true as it gets, because women have to be have to mate hypergamously, so they have to find someone above them on an income and a social economic level. The problem is a lot of them are making 100,000 plus. They can't find men who are earning more than them. So they're not mating. They're just sitting around with their money and telling me about how I'm a high-value woman. No, a high-value woman is a Victoria's Secret model, honey. It's not a woman who makes $100,000 plus. That's not how women. They literally think, a lot of them, that what attracts women to men, money, resources, masculinity, whatever, skills, and all that sort of stuff, is the same thing that attracts women to men. They're really confused.
Yeah,
and they're like, I don't understand.
It's not the same. And, after my last appearance here, I wrote a blog post about it, and I talked about how the personal is political for men too. So that was that was a rallying cry for women, in around 1970, somewhere around that era. And it's the same thing is true for men. The personal stuff, exactly like you're talking about. If men are like, wow, there's not enough jobs for me, and I feel like I'm being discriminated against in hiring practices and in education, and I don't like this, that affects them personally, and that is affecting their vote. It's not just about what's like the fiscal policy of the Fed or things like that. It's also the personal stuff that affects them directly. And, men are human beings too. Their personal stuff affects men just as much as it affects women. And somehow the Democratic Party hasn't gotten that message. I'm hoping this is a wake-up call this year. I mean, you've lost the White House, the Supreme Court, the Senate, and most likely when all the votes are counted, I'd be shocked if they didn't lose a House. But you've lost everything. Isn't it time to wake up? Try something else? Wow. So what would you? This is the question I put to people when I have these discussions this year. They would say, "Oh, why should we listen to men? Why do we care about?" I'm like, let me just ask you this, to a progressive Democrat: would you rather just simply acknowledge that, hey, guess what? Men and boys have some issues too, and instead of just completely ignoring them, let's listen to them. And you know what? When it makes sense, let's support them. Or would you rather just have 20 years of all right-wing Republican control because you ignored men and they all voted Republican. That's what I asked them.
Yeah.
And, people would still, no, I'm not going to do anything for men. I'd rather lose. And you're like, okay, you just lost. So you did it. Congrats.
And this is my biggest fear. I mean, as soon as I saw the attacks on men starting, and it's funny, I thought of you on election night, not you personally, but you know what you wrote. Sounded kind of weird there for a second. I thought about you personally. Anyway, I thought about your book, and you know what the first thing that came to mind was? It wasn't, oh God, another 4 years of fucking hell that I went through with Donald Trump. It was, oh God, all the women who didn't show up to vote, just like Hillary, are going to put me through this again, where they're going to hate on men. They're going to amp up all the men hate. We're probably going to have another, I don't know, some sort of Me Too where everyone's going to get called out for bad dating and, I don't know, looking at a woman askance. And, I don't know if you remember all the shit that went down. I mean, there was the big parades of all the women who didn't vote out wearing the pink hats, and I fully supported them. But they did it to me again. This is the second time they have had the arrogance and an entitlement. And part of it was, too, is both Hillary Clinton and Vice President Harris, they were forced on us. So the Democratic Party was broke under Obama. It had 8 good years, and they just had all sorts of fun. So what Hillary Clinton did is Obama, kneecapped fucking Biden and said, no, you shouldn't run. It's women's time to rule, in 2016. And Bernie, yeah, so she loaned the Democratic Party, if I recall rightly, $200 million, and she basically bought the Democratic Party because it was broke. And then she sabotaged Bernie. Bernie was trying to run. They were, they did all sorts of shit. They wouldn't give him reports. They wouldn't give him databases. She did everything she could to sabotage Bernie. I remember watching it, and I wasn't a Bernie fan. I was like, I'd really rather have Hillary, but in the end, the women didn't show up to vote for Hillary. And I've talked to women for 8 years. They're like, yeah, we don't like other women. Yeah, we don't trust women in the White House. Yeah, we don't, all this sort of, and catty stuff. I don't like her as a woman. I'm like, so you voted for Trump? What is going on? I thought we were over here. So you've broken this down in your book. Let's get some plugs in for your book. You analyzed this 2016-2020 Democratic disconnect. You started seeing this a long time ago. Give us some more thoughts on that.
Yeah, this has been a pattern. People are talking like, oh my gosh, this just happened all of a sudden. The big change this year is only that it happened now even among the younger men. Like Democrats have sort of taken all men for granted, but the middle-aged and older men had already started to swing Republican pretty strongly over the last 40 years. And now the thing that really shocked people, or the thing that was different this year, now even the young men this year came too. But to me, that wasn't a surprise at all. It just kind of finally trickled down to the younger men. And this is what I think people need to think about. The party needs to focus, again, still on all men. Not they say, oh, we lost young men, we need to get them back. But it's more than that. The party needs to get focused on all men again, because guess what? In 15 years, those young men are going to start to become middle-aged men. Oh, yeah. And they're going to still have the same feelings and same problems and same issues. And it's a mistake to only focus on young men. They are, if you look at the data, they swung from, almost like 30 points, like from way for Biden to way for Trump. I mean, they were the biggest swing demographic this election. So they are, it is an important story. But, this has been going on for a while. The 2020 Democratic National, the platform, same thing. A whole bunch of stuff for women, absolutely nothing for men. 2016, same thing. The White House, quote unquote, Gender Policy Council. Obama had one back, he started in 2009. It was called the Women and Girls, Council. Well, Biden started one. He made it a gender neutral name. Sounds gender neutral, Gender Policy Council. Now, this might not sound like a big deal to people, because I don't get it, Mark. What's a big deal? So the president has some council. These people have the ear of the president of the United States. And in the last year, here's a statistic that never got mentioned by either party. Okay, the fact that men are now dying 5.9 years earlier than women. Nobody talked about that. It wasn't in the debates, it wasn't in any platform, nothing. And nobody talks about that at all. And then, people are shocked when the Democratic Party finances women's health for $600 million, saying, oh, there hasn't been, historically not enough research done for women. Now, there is some truth to that. In the past, there wasn't. But we've created 8 offices of women's health since the 1980s. And, those offices of health have done a lot. Now, maybe there's more that needs to be done. That's fine. We can look at the data, the numbers. But don't you think the group that is dying 5.9 years earlier, even when Harvard Magazine said, you know what, we need to study better why men are dying so much earlier, because this is really not right, and people say, don't men die earlier anyway? But the best statistics we have on what would be naturally is actually monasteries and convents, because then you have a controlled group that lives a very studyable lifestyle. And in that situation, women live 1 year longer than men. And 100 years ago, the life expectancy difference was 1 year. Women lived 1 year longer than men. Now it's 6 in the United States. And so if you look at two populations and say, hey, one group is dying this much earlier, shouldn't you just say, hey, something is going on here? That's just one very, very simple, non-controversial, high-level example. A lot of the Democrats' problem too is just messaging. A lot of their, kind of like you were saying earlier, a lot of their values are things that I really agree with. They just don't message it properly. For instance, we talk about the prison industrial complex or mass incarceration and how many people are in jail. Harris had a good point when she said this is one of the few things, she could have used better. She said she wanted to completely legalize marijuana and get everyone out of jail who's in jail for, using marijuana. I thought that was a great idea, and she could have pointed out, and guess what? 93% of those people are men. So if you've got a husband or a son in jail, you want to get him out, vote for me. And men, if you don't want to go to jail for a crime that's considered very minor and something that should be legal, vote for me. But it was never framed as a gender issue by the Democrats, even though if you just look at the data, it's clearly a gender issue. So they just had so many opportunities like that this year. And it's just, they have this attitude of, we will not ever, ever, ever say anything about men. They could maybe say something about black men. There was a Hail Mary attempt. I don't know if you caught that at the end, about 2 weeks before the election, where the Harris team brought out their opportunity agenda for black men only. And I just thought that was, first of all, I'm not a big fan of race-based initiatives or programs like that for the federal government. That's it. Let's just support everyone. Yeah. But if you are going to do something, like a health thing, which would be great, like men's health, because men and women, again, our bodies are different. Our health outcomes are different. There's a reason for those kind of things. So there were just so many opportunities. And then here's the other thing that really bothered me this year is something I call man washing. It's what the Democratic Party did. So the worst example of man washing of all time is, do you remember Dukakis coming out in the tank? Like 1988. Yeah. They had a photo op of him. But anyway, they brought Tim Walz out this year with the shotgun and the orange vest, and he's going to go pheasant hunting. And, it kind of makes him relatable in a way. I'm not saying it's bad to do that. It reminded me, when I saw that photo, that reminded me of John Kerry in 2004. They did the exact same thing. John Kerry is getting swift voted by the Swift Vote Veterans for Truth. And so we got to make him more tough and masculine. So he's going to go hunting. And then they did this whole hunting PR thing. And I just call that man washing. You're not supporting men. You're not supporting their health. Like you say, their economic issues or the jobs issues that specifically, focus on men. It's kind of like greenwashing, like a company that has like a picture of a duck in a pond. Look how good we are for the environment, but they're actually trashing the environment. Yeah. It's like that. It's like man washing. It's look how good we are for men because our vice presidential candidate coaches a football team. Okay, that's great. I mean, I liked him. I'm a Minnesota native.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
He's a great guy. In fact, of the 4 candidates, the 2 presidential, 2 vice, he had the highest likability rating. People liked Tim Walz the most. He wasn't a bad choice. I think he was a good choice, but I just don't think it was nearly enough.
Yeah, I think a better choice too would have been the Shapiro,
Shapiro from Pennsylvania
governor. Yeah,
it might have helped.
So the other reason I left the Democratic Party, number one, is the doubling down, like in not seeing mea culpa on social media and the hate. I mean, I'm what the internet terms a high value man. I make more than $100,000 a year. I'm more than 6 feet tall, and I have all the other parts. I'm a big giant man in all regards. And, you know, they're on there going, we need the 3 6s, we need masculine men, we need all this stuff. And we either have it or we don't do it. You know, I've studied all the data on dating where women, they're just targeting 6 foot tall men. They actually put it in their dating apps. And so any man who's below 6 foot or 5'11", I think it is, doesn't really get seen on dating apps at all.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mentioned earlier about how women are making more than 100,000. If you want a man who makes more than 100,000 who's single and available for mating and dating, there's only 1% of us. I'm like a 0.00001% man. Your chance of finding me in America and possibly getting a date with me as a single man is like 1 out of like 10 million or something. And that's if I like you and ask you out. And so a lot of these women, and I counsel a lot of them, they can't find men that are hypergamously above them. And they're screwed. And even Merrill Lynch, I think it's Merrill Lynch or one of the other big firms, they came out with a report that basically said 50% of women between the childbearing ages by 2030 are going to be single and alone with no prospects of a family. And
wow.
You look at it because the stats, you've heard the stats for years about how more women are going to college than men. What does that mean? That means those men aren't going to be making enough money to make more than the women who went to college and doing the thing, and they won't be starting families. And that's a real problem. And men, you know, you can try and blame men for shit, but men just want to pay the bills. They just want to raise their children. They just want to have a shot at the title of being a dad and you know, doing the nuclear whatever family from the 50s where you get the 2-picket fence. Men just want to pay the bills. They just want to take care of a family. And if they can't do that, I mean, this just comes down to biological paradigms of breeding, mating, and propagating the species. It's all it is. And so are men assholes because they want to pay the bills for their family? No.
Yeah, no, that's an admirable thing. And again, that kind of gets back to Josh Hawley, his book, and to Senator Rubio's report. It was talking about that exact issue right there. Again, so the Republicans are hitting that exact issue you're talking about in a male-focused way. Now, everyone talks about the economy, of course. Economy is always a top issue. But how do you frame it? How do you frame it? And it's the Democrats that just refuse to frame those things. You know, they did a great thing, for instance, the Chips and Sciences Act, creating all of these new, you know, multi-billion-dollar facilities around the country because guess what? We're worried about Taiwan because a lot of chips are made in Taiwan. We're worried about the safety of Taiwan. And hey, we should be making those things just like we need to create our own energy. We need to create our own, you know, chips because they make the world run. And we found that out during COVID when everything got shut down. So they have all these great jobs and, you know, it was reported a lot of these jobs are going to go to men. They're going to be high-paying jobs that, you know, men could apply, you know, in fields that a lot of men work in, construction and engineering. Those are two fields that a lot of men work in. It's great. No, Democrats would never want to talk about it. In fact, Pete Buttigieg was on MSNBC, and the host said, we don't want to talk about that because that's white men getting those jobs. They don't vote for us. And it's
holy shit.
Yeah, she said that's a paraphrase. I would go get the exact quote, but it was something right along those lines. And as you know, she say the opposite is great that we're creating all these jobs for everyone, and let's just do more and more jobs. Exactly like you were saying before. I loved what you said about the whole scarcity mindset versus the abundance mindset. This is a classic case of that, where it should have been more of the abundance mindset. Great, look at these. We're making ourselves independent. We're making these chips. This would be a great way to fuel all our school system, to get people trained to be able to work in these plants and to build these plants. Like, how perfect is this? This is great. It's exactly what the government should be doing. We should be creating these important things. And so, it's like the Biden administration, I believe, spearheaded this amazing Chips and Sciences Act, and Trump got Elon Musk, and people said, oh, no, he's the guy. I'd rather just follow Elon Musk because he's with Trump. So I think that was another huge opportunity missed by the Democrats.
You've been seeing this come for a long time with male issues. You know, we've had psychologists on the show and PhD people. These aren't just some Joe who came along with opinion. We don't put that on the show. And they wrote books 20 to 30 years ago about how men were going to have problems because men had largely been driven from schools and activist feminist women had taken over teaching. And what they were doing was treating men as dysfunctional women, as dysfunctional girls. So they took away recess so that men don't have a way to get out all their extra energy. You know, we learn differently, we behave differently, we have different needs. And, you know, they were literally telling men, why can't you be more like the girls? The girls, you know, they follow the rules, they do the things. Why can't you be more like them? And just punish men, just beat boys over the head. And these psychologists 20 to 30 years ago, I can cite you the books, they're on the Chris Voss Show and interviews we've done. They wrote these books 20 to 30 years ago saying men are failing. Men are going to have a problem 20 to 30 years from now. And you can go back and read those books like they were fucking prophets. They nailed it out of the park. When I talk to Gen Z men, I have gaming groups as well. I have a big Discord for gaming, and you know we did a lot of gaming reviews back before COVID on the Chris Voss Show for 10 years. So we know these Gen Z men. You know, a lot of them were in our groups when they were like 10. Now they're like 20, 15, or 25. And I see where they're at. Like a lot of them are virgins. They don't care about dating women. They see all the negative shit that I see every day on TikTok when I go on TikTok or social media, where it's just men shitting on men 24/7, kill all men, steal from men, how to manipulate men and get all their money. I mean, go pull the hashtags. They're in the trillions of views, billions of views, and probably a billion videos that are just bashing men. And anytime you go try and find the alternative equality fight back, it's not there and it's banned. You know, a lot of the manosphere got banned on YouTube, who was run by a woman. A lot of Twitter, of course, kicked a lot of them off. And well, some of the manosphere stuff is really fucking toxic. I don't approve of some of Andrew Tate's content, or a large part of his content. But some of the things he does get right on men, he gets right on men and women's relations. But I'm not a big fan of his.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think what can happen is when one side just doesn't talk about men at all, the other side has a few good things to say. Yeah. Like you say, like maybe, oh, yeah, actually that was a good point, a couple good points. And then that kind of draws people in. They say, if they were right on that, they must be right on all the other stuff. And I agree with you. I don't like a lot of the things. Obviously every individual is different, but there's certain things that are said, obviously, in the universe that are toxic all over the place.
And it should have been
too bad.
It should have been probably a warning sign to the Democratic Party that, you know, Andrew Tate really took off with his comments, and he hit a hot button. And I know what that hot button is because I talk to young men, and they can't propagate, they can't create families, they can't afford to, they don't want to. When they see the toxic hate against men online, we won't date you unless you're 6 foot tall and you make six figures. These guys are 20 years old, they're 22 years old, 25. I know 24-year-old virgins, men, and they're not interested in women. They see all the noise and they go, no, I'm checking out. I'm not marrying, I'm not starting a family. One of my friends, I'll put it that way, he's got a Corvette that's a racing Corvette. He takes the tracks. He's got a giant-ass brand new four-door pickup truck. I have no idea what he needs it for. And I don't think he does either, because you know what is people who own trucks only use them 3% of the time. But he spends his money having a good time. He's like a lot of men, even me nowadays, where we're just like, yeah, I don't really want to do the whole marriage thing. I'm just going to spend my money on myself, and I'm going to have a great fucking time. And that's what these young men are doing. Instead of shoving it into families and starting families and kids and propagating the species, they're having a great fucking time. You know, I'm playing video games with them every night on Call of Duty. They're checked the fuck out. They have zero fucking interest in women. It shocks the hell out of me, and I followed it for a long time because I'm like, yeah, I mean, you don't even want to try and date women. I mean, they're kind of really cool, especially if you find a nice one who respects you. It's kind of fun. But they're just like, nope. We see the other thing that they see, and you've probably seen some of the books that have come out, like why men are doing what they're doing, boys are failing. I can't think of the titles off the top of my head.
The Boy Crisis, Warren Farrell.
Yeah, we've had Warren on the show. He did a plug.
Yeah,
for
he's
book.
Great.
And the Boy Crisis, man, he really nailed down a lot of stuff. And this was years ago. It was 2019 or 18. He wrote that. Mm-hmm. But I talk to these young men, and they're just disaffected. And part of it is too, and there's still blame that comes from them. Like Scott Galloway, you mentioned Professor Scott Galloway. His dumb ass is always like knocking men. Men just need to quit, put the video games down and fucking man up and shit. And he talks this traditional con stuff, that trad con stuff that is just off the chart. And you're just like, dude, you have no idea. You've been married for 30 years. Shut up. I'm going on dates every week. I see what men are having to deal with and see. I mean, 95% of my dates I reject, and they don't get past the coffee date because they have so many liabilities, problems, and issues. And I'm not going to invest in that. And what Scott Galloway and others get wrong that bash men for stuff is men biologically, there's an old adage, you don't wife up the town whore. Okay, men know you can't make that woman pair bond to you. She will not stay with your kids. She will not raise your kids. This is caveman biology crap that is in men's hindbrain as to why we pick women and choose women. And what a lot of these young men see is this: they're disgusted by the hot girl summer. They see women encouraging other women to do triple-digit body counts over the summer. They're disgusted by that because we have that hindbrain thing that says you can't raise a family with that person. She will not stay with you. She will have high divorce rates. She'll have high depression. We know this from a biological, core. And that's what a lot of men are disgusted by. They see all this stuff going on that women are yelling at them, blaming them for everything, not taking self-accountability, which is kind of kryptonite for female nature, if you understand female nature. And so it's just blaming men. And so men are just like, you know what? We're taking our ball and going home. In my dating groups, which are several thousand people, I've done surveys, and they match the surveys some other influencers have done. So one woman influencer, I thought her numbers would be skewed because she's a woman influencer, and guys may be following her because they're attracted to her. She did a poll of, I think it was 500,000 men or a couple 100,000 men that were in her audience, of how many men are actively dating, actively seeking to date, actively asking women out. She came up with 12%. 12% of single men that are out there that are eligible to date are the ones actively dating. And we know about 5% of those are the chads. So there's this chad thing going on in hookup culture where you have 95% of women on dating apps chasing chads and giving sex away for free. In fact, a lot of times they're paying for the dinners and trips of the chads and everything else. Wow. Well, the men have figured this out. The men have woken up. They've seen the data. I mean, it's data. Yeah. This isn't something I imagine. You can pull the dating from dating apps and see how women are what's the right word? They're not preferencing certain men.
They have a very high skew toward a very small number of men, and where the men tend to be more balanced. Yeah.
And they think that millionaire 6-foot-tall men grow on trees. They just need to find one. And you're like, no, that's only 1% of the population of single men who make more than $100,000 and are over 6 foot tall. It's less than 1% that are available. And we're in such high demand as high value men because everyone wants us, and it's been broadcast a billion times on TikTok. I mean, I just sit around just going, no, no, no. I've had plenty of women ask me out. I'm like, no. But these women are disgusted. These men are disgusted by it. And that's why they're tuning out. They're just like, fuck it. If we don't have enough money, we're going to spend our money on ourselves. If women are going to bash us. So the numbers I've come up with, my group, is 9 to 10%. So I did surveys in my group of men, and I'm like, why? And part of my groups is coaching and trying to get men to date, teaching them old world dating techniques. I've used old world dating techniques. I call them old world. Really, it's the 90s.
Like asking someone out.
Yeah, I ask a woman out. I pick her up at her house. I take her to a nice, expensive restaurant. I take her to some, miniature golf or the theater or whatever. I mean, shit. My last big date was like $600 freaking bucks, and that's another factor too. $600 for a date for 8 hours. And all it was a dinner at one of the most expensive restaurants in town, which is nice, but really it didn't used to be that way because it's the same place I've been going to since the 90s. And then miniature golf wasn't that much. But yeah, $600 fucking bucks. And I can afford to do that. I can do that. Most of these Gen Z boys, they can't scrub $50.
That's a lot of money for a date for someone you don't know if it's gonna work out for.
And then even if it does, I gotta keep doing those. My dating bill is like $2,000-$3,000 a month, I think. Most guys can't afford to fucking even come close to that. And so the numbers that I've polled in my dating group is basically 9 to 10% of men are dating. About half of those are chads doing hookup culture. A lot of the women that I talk to don't really want to do hookup culture. Some do, some don't. But they really would like to find a good masculine man. They really want to. They all say they want real dates, even though half of them are chasing chad things. But that means only about 5% of men are in the market looking for long-term relationships, actively dating, actively spending money, and doing it. And I think I guess I gotta go good and bad on Professor Galloway. I think he said something along the lines of crap, I just lost it. But he said something good where he basically nailed it. He said that, marriage is becoming a luxury item.
Wow.
And dating is becoming a luxury item. And it really is, if you think about it. A lot of these women, they want $20,000 or $30,000 for a wedding. Who can afford that? I can't. I won't afford that. Let's put it that way. I'm always joking around about how people are like, why did you ever get married, Chris? I'm like, I'm still saving up the $2-3 million I need for the divorce. And these men can't afford it. They can't afford to date. So think about it. You have 90% of eligible single young men, not all young men, because it goes across the spectrum up to 60, but you have 90% of men sitting on the fence. They've been abused for 20, 30 years now, told they're pieces of shit, told that they're the patriarchy, told that they're the awful people in the world. And they've gone, okay, we're going to take our money, we're going to take our ball, and we're just going to do our things. And so now you see all these women on TikTok going, where are all the good men? Why are men hiding from us? Why are men not wanting to be with us? Why don't you go see all the other videos from your fucking sisterhood and bashing men? And and honestly, the men are having a good time. We're designed to roam the Serengeti as lions and be alone. We get trillions of sperm. We're designed to drop it everywhere. Women get one egg. So they're real particular about who gets access to that one egg. And so men are designed to roam. Women have a biological ticking clock in their head that goes, you need to have babies now. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't. We're just like, we want to fuck and spread our seed, and that's kind of what we're designed to do. That's our path is to spread our seed everywhere and hope we get lucky and hope we get a future, propagation of our species and a future legacy to our seed and our DNA. And to have 90% of men, they're not worried about having a family. We're designed to live alone and be nomads as men. We're fine. Women are communal. We're designed to be individuals and aggressive and disagreeable. Women are designed to be communal and togetherness. And if they don't have it, they kind of lose themselves. And so men, and I think too, a lot of these young men, they see the average marriage only lasts 7 to 8 years now. Women are just basically using men as a turnstile stump and a mule. And so they're getting married to men after, running the gambit through all these alpha chads and creating alpha widows that just haunt them because they want them back. So they get with the beta man and they just run them through for 7, 8 years. They get the kids where they can walk and do their own thing. And then they pull the ripcord once they're at their peak money they can get out of it. And they go on, they divorce them. And
a lot of men just feel like Wallace. Yeah, a lot of men just feel like, why should I go through this? I think there's been enough of the curtain has been pulled back from the family court system and how against men it is. And I think a lot of men really see that and they say, wow, having a kid is a really high risk venture at this point, because not only financially, but emotionally. I mean, imagine if, you have this kid, you do everything right, you have a couple kids and you're supporting them and you're trying to be the best dad and the best person you can be and the best husband and all that. And the other person can just willingly, leave that relationship. The entire system is set up for that other person to, basically get everything they want. And you just have to, do whatever the courts tell you, or you risk losing your driver's license, your passport, going to jail, all this kind of stuff. And even if you want to pay and you're trying to do the right thing, if you get laid off and just can't pay, they don't care. They say, you could have been working. We think you're lying. Therefore, we're going to punish you anyway. And then there's been so many bad stories about this kind of thing. I think that affects the choices that young men are making. And that's another reason why in my book, another topic I talk about is shared parenting. So at least if you can take away that potential negative outcome from marriage. If you say, worst case scenario, I'll get my kids half the time and I won't have to pay child support, and maybe not alimony has also gone down in terms of the number of people who have to pay it. So if people are, okay, it's not likely I'm going to have to pay alimony and child support. If we break up, it's going to be tough, but at least it'll be even. I think that would make a lot of men more likely to want to commit and get married and have kids. Yeah. But when they know the system is going to screw them over, and they see it happening to people, I mean, especially now, like you said, with social media, people post videos of all this stuff. You can see plenty of instances of men complaining about the family court system.
And no one cares. I mean, men, if men cheat, it's, men, you're bad men. You cheat. You guys are dogs. If women cheat, it's, he must have done something not to support her.
What was she missing? She needed to go outside of the relationship to find something. Yeah.
James Sexton has really exposed a lot of divorce court. I don't know if you've seen him. I'm sure you have. He was on Soft White Underbelly, the big thing, and then he had his own breakout, I think, video he did with somebody. But he nailed it. He goes, the divorce, and that's the other thing men have figured out. Men are logical and reasonable, so we figure out the shit. Where women are just emotional and they just go, everything must be great, and men are like, no, we read the data. And, I've had discussions with women on this. We don't do data, we do feelings. And I'm like, that's not how the world works. And James Sexton nailed it. He goes, men have figured out that 80 to 90% of women, 90% of educated women that file for divorce or that are in divorce court, they filed it 90% of the time. 80% if they're not educated, they are filing it. Women are filing all the divorces. It's not men leaving, it's women leaving, and they're punching out at the highest dollar value they can get, and then trying to monkey branch to somebody else. And so they've done the math. And James Sexton said it perfectly. He goes basically, why anybody who signs a marriage contract today, you have a chance of it ending within 7 to 8 years, almost guaranteed. 80 to 90% of the time, the woman's going to leave, and she's incentivized to leave. She gets bonuses. She goes, why would anyone in their right mind sign a contract where there is a bonus incentive to break that contract? Why? You hear the men hear the vows. It's like, sickness, health, and forever. It's 8 years.
I always thought they should change the vows and have them just read the marriage contract, like stipulation 1: if you get divorced, you are going to get all. Say what's real true, because people say, I made these vows, but the vows are just theatrical. They're not the legal document. I think it'd be interesting to have a lawyer read all the fine print of a marriage contract.
I think they should have a comedy drum rim shot every time they read the different aspects of the vow. You will be together in sickness and health. It's just farce and comedy. And I think men, a lot of times, we're fixers. So we go into these situations, we go into all sorts of situations, we have this captain savior thing that women will appeal to our egos. And, we're like, hey, okay, I know it's broken. I know this is high risk, but I'm a fixer. I can make it different. And that's the glorious thing about men, because we're willing to do that. And we fix things. But you can't fix other people. That's the one thing you cannot do. And maybe if you're a psychologist, you can help them. But you can't fix other people that are broken. And a lot of these men, they just see it. A lot of these young men, I talk to them, they see the lay of the land. They're not jaded. They're not totally enamored by a masculine, faux masculine, toxic, dark triad traits are always a thing that women are attracted to, but Jesus Christ, Donald Trump's dark triad off the chart. And so they're not so much enamored with that. They just see the lay of the land. And they're like, I'm not attracted to those women, Chris. That's what they tell me. They go, I'm not attracted to these women who have the colored hair and the arm sleeves and the pierced face that has 5 piercings in it. They don't like the masculine women. That's one of the biggest problems I have when I counsel women on dating, is so many of them are masculine today because they have to be, because they don't have a man in their life. So they have to be the father and mother as single mothers. They've been in their masculine for so long, they don't even understand how they signal it. But we do, because we're men. And so when men challenge us, we we go, okay, that's another man. All right, I'm either going to have to punch him in the face or kick him down a notch verbally. I'm going to have to assert my alphaness. And that's how men, we pecking order stuff, we hierarchy stuff, we haze each other to test how good we are on things. Women try doing that shit with me or other men, and they think it's funny, or they think it's, it's a great way for attraction, or, I love masculine women go, I'm like a man. I don't understand why men are attracted to me, Chris. I'm like, because it's polarity. A masculine man is attracted to a masculine man. If we did, we'd be on Grindr. Do you understand?
Yeah, and I mean there might, and I'm a big fan of live and let live. I live in San Francisco, and there's all sorts of people there who have all sorts of feelings and interests. I think that's part of America, is we have the freedom to be us. But the majority of people are going to follow in a traditional pattern, and I think there's it's good to accept that everyone can be who they are as a human being, and great, live your life, but then don't always think that everyone is going to feel exactly the same way. That's another, and that's the challenge with our society, I think, in general, both politically and personally. I just think, with the advent of the internet, everyone is fractured into these small groups that have different beliefs or values. And I think it's made it hard to sort of herd people into groups, or people maybe let me say it this way. I think it's made it harder for people sometimes to relate to one another. And it's easier for people to point at people and say they're the other, they're this different group, because there's so many of these like online communities and splinter groups now.
Yeah. And the bashing of the patriarchy, the hate towards men, I mean, this has been going on for a long time. And for a long time, men just went, okay, we'll listen. Okay, me too. We'll listen to you. And then it got down to just, you get me too if you had a bad date, if you didn't call her back or something. You're just like, what's going on? We went from, rape and sexual assault to if we just, and then even in California, they tried to pass a law that if men looked wrongly at women or hit on them in public, hey, you're good looking, can I get your number? That would be illegal. It's like the most insane feminist thing. I mean, you want to talk about driving men away. And now the women are like, how come men don't approach us anymore? You see this in millions of videos all over social media. How come men don't talk to us anymore? How come they don't hit us? How come they don't hit us when we're at the bar? Yeah, because we're afraid of being Me Too'd. We're afraid of being called out on dates. Like, women are calling out men on bad dates on TikTok, and they're making it like their brand. And I've had to reach a point in dating where I have to go check any woman I ask out social media, because if she's one of those people who just calls out men and for dating, she's not serious about meeting a man and having a relationship. This is her brand. She's making money off of, I don't know, bashing men. And men are sick of it. We're just tired of it. And
absolutely.
We can't find feminine women. That's the other thing Scott Galloway gets wrong. We can't find feminine women. We can't find women who want to be nurturers. We can't find women that want a relationship. A lot of women that I've been interested in, they're chasing chads. They're just going through chats. I've started something that's kind of interesting on a book that I have coming out on dating. I've started interviewing chads. These chads are going through 40 to 50 women every month or 2 months. Wow. They have a woman in their bed every single night. Women that are older than them that try and buy them like sugar daddies, so they're sugar mamas. They'll pay for everything. The women that are just trying to get with them. And these women are getting upset. And you see them write these hateful men videos, all men are bad. Who are you dating? I'm dating chads that are pumping and dumping me and about 40 other women. Wow. And you're like, no wonder you hate men. And the problem is you're hating all men when your reflection of your dating process is just these top 5% of men who, if you gave every man just unlimited sexual availability to women, they would never get married and have children. Not in a million fucking years. They would just be like, I have a harem of 30 women at my beck and call. So I've been interviewing these chads, and part of hookup culture is 97% of the dating market now. And men have gotten wise too. Like, even like common men, or men that maybe they're not the top 5% chads, but they're a little bit off. They're also telling women, no, I just want to do hookup culture with you. I want to pump and dump, Netflix and chill. Don't want to marry you. And women are angry about it. But you're like, they see you buying dinners for the Chads. Like, so a lot of these women, the reason they're angry is because they bought dinners, they paid for money, they paid for trips. They did all this thing that men do for women when they date them. And they're angry because they put this big investment, they offer the sexual nature for it. And these men just have massive amounts of things. And they can't understand why these men won't pair bond to them like women pair bond to men, because we have different chemicals in our brain when we mate. Women pair bond. The more you have sex with them, the more they will bind to you and pair bond to you. And it's designed that way so that she'll stay with the children, she'll stay with the man, she'll raise the family. Men are designed to have fun with sex. It doesn't mean anything. We can go cheat and still come home and love our wife and family. Women can't cheat. When women cheat, they have emotionally left that relationship and they moved on to another. It's very different in how we process it. But the problem is, feminism has told everybody that we're all equal. We're not really that different. In fact, men can have babies and periods too. And, all yada, yada, all this woke shit that has driven men away. And I support it. I support, if you want to transition, you're over 18, I support you. If you're LGBTQ, I support you. Whatever you want to call yourself, you want to call yourself a duck, okay, knock yourself the fuck out. Just don't push on anybody else and, do your thing. I'm all supportive of it.
Yeah, there's even been changes. I believe it was Hawaii where they changed the language in the law to, instead of mothers giving birth to kids, it was people with uteruses giving birth to kids or something like that. Do we really have to change the legal landscape for, I don't know. I'm with you. I support everyone. Hey, I've got friends who've transitioned and they seem very much, they're happy that they did it and it changed their life. Fantastic. Yeah. Great. I would 100% support that. And other people want to do it. Again, you can be supportive of people, but and of all different categories, but that doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater and start bashing men all the time. Right? That's kind of what's happening. Yeah.
And it's funny, I'll see women bash I don't believe in the paternity. Oh, but you voted for a man to oversee you in government. Oh, women are the biggest supporters now of religion. Religion is surviving on women, and that's why they've changed a lot of their narratives. If you understand and study the data, and all religion is a paternity. A man looks over me and looks after me. A lot of single moms are into religion, and it's just that's the patriarchy. But God watches over them, takes care of them. Male patriarchy right there. But they don't acknowledge that. They just bash whatever men do, and it's really. And this is the other reason I left. And like I said, I haven't flipped to being a Trump supporter or a Republican. That's never going to happen. I used to be one under George W. Bush. I left back then when I thought he was stupid and incompetent. So I'm not coming back anytime soon, people. But I wanted to move to an independent because, this is twice strikeout. They forced, there should have been, and I think Democrats can see this now. Biden should have stuck to his, I'm not a transition president. I'm a transition president. I'm only going to do one term. And he should have given us a chance to have a contest.
Yep, exactly.
If Kamala came out at the top of that heap, same thing with Hillary. There was no contest with Hillary. There should have been 8 to 9 candidates, and we saw the debates of 8 to 9 candidates.
Let them duke it out.
Let him duke it out. We did that with Biden in 2020. Let him duke it out, and the best man or woman will win. If Hillary and Kamala had come on top of that after that contest, great. You know what would have been really great for this? And as soon as Biden said he was resigning, I wanted this, was King Newsom. I think Newsom is a good-looking man. The one thing you have to understand about women and how they vote is they'll vote over social issues for a good-looking dude who's masculine. They will do that. And that's what they did this time. And if you understand the plight of what women are going through right now, they can't find masculine man. I was out at one of my singles events last night for singles to meet up with each other. I heard just endless talk about how can't find a masculine man, how do we find, and then the other problem that they have is how do we get to be feminine again, Chris, because we want to attract masculine men. And so they have this, but then they want to, they do all this stuff in schools. These kids are emasculated in single mother homes. They're taught that all men are bad. I was raised in I wasn't normal, but I was raised in a 2-parent family. My parents didn't divorce until after we left the home. God bless them, because they should have gotten divorced earlier. But I was told all sorts of shit. Men are rapists as a child. Men are bad, and it's nothing compared to what an 8-year-old or 5-year-old boy turns on TikTok and gets assaulted with.
Wow.
And Someone said that to me, and I think I brought this up with you on the show last time. I'm 57. I can handle the shit that women are putting out on, the shrews are putting out on, some of the women are putting out, I should say, not all women are putting out on TikTok. I can handle that. I can ride with it. And I kind of know some of it is, I just have to provide masculine frame with some of them. But there's a lot of damage and trauma out there. But someone said to me, they go, Chris, you can handle it. But what about a 5-year-old boy who's turning on TikTok and seeing him and his self and his masculinity and his manness being just shit on in the trillions of video views? Trillions.
Yeah, this is really harmful to our boys,
You
Absolutely.
want him to be masculine? You want him to be masculine when he grows up? He's going to go through a school system that's going to tell him, you need to be like the girls, who you need to, settle down, and you need to do the things like them. You need to not act out. You need to not be a boy. And so it's a problem. I don't know if you want to expand on that, but one thing I want to get to is, we need to get the Democratic Party read your book. How can we fix this in the future? How do we get out of this? Because what I see is we now don't have two parties. We just have men versus women. And that's our political system.
That absolutely needs to change. I mean, I do think that the Democratic Party is going to really need to take a step back and really reevaluate how they're doing things, the personnel who's running things. And the very first thing they need to do is we need to look at this way that we've completely ignored men, and we need to stop that. We need to first just acknowledge their issues, and they need to in fact, people are saying, what would you have said then? What would you have said then? Okay, now you just lost. Okay, here's what I would do if I were whoever you want to be going forward, the figurehead of the party, whether that's going to be, I don't know who the figurehead is now. Now that Harris lost, I don't know who it is, but somebody should.
Excuse me.
Okay. And the problem with Newsom, because because I'm a California resident, right? I live in San Francisco, so I know he is, unfortunately, the problem with Newsom. He's the same exact way as these Democrats on this issue. But if I could counsel, let's say it's Newsom or whoever it is, say, this is a message to all the men and boys out there in America. We just got a message very loud and clear. We've been missing the boat with you guys. We are sorry. You guys have done so much to build our country up. You protected us during times of war. You built our bridges, our roads, our tunnels, our infrastructure. You helped develop, men have just done so many great things for our country. And we dropped the ball with you guys. We are a changed party. We are a new party. We're supporting everyone. We're going to continue our support for women and girls, but we're now going to focus better. And we have a new head of the Democratic Men's Caucus, within our party, and he's going to work on all these issues. We're going to do a listening tour. We want to listen to you. We want to listen to what you're pissed off about. We're going to listen to what we can do better to you. If they just started with that today, it's like acknowledgement. We were wrong. We were wrong. We got the message. We're building today they need to start campaigning for 2026 and 2028 today. Last year, when I just started my blog, I said they need to focus on this yesterday. Okay, now we're a year later. You've lost everything. Start today. I mean, the best time to invest is 30 years ago. The second best time is today, right? Start today. They call me. I'll work for them. Give me a call. I'd be happy to work for the party and start this process for them.
Yeah, I think you should. I'll nominate you, as if I have any power to do that. Well, I'll vote for you.
Thank you.
It's when you talk about this in your book, I want to get some more plugs in here for your book. You have several chapters: adding male gender issues to Democratic Party platform, pass HR 4182, Men's Health and Awareness Improvement Act. I mean, who doesn't want men to be healthy? What the fuck? Fixing the education gap by making schools boy-friendly. I mean, literally, those authors that we've had on the show that wrote these books 20 or 30 years ago that were prophetic in where men are struggling right now, they literally will tell you, you need to check out your school and see if it's boy-friendly. And if not, you need to move you and your boy to a place that's boy-friendly. That's how bad it is. That's how bad it is. Support fatherhood to help keep more fathers involved with their children. I'm all for laws that if a man doesn't pay his child support and has alimony, okay, great. Put him in jail, take away his fucking driver's license. But we have wholesale a lot of women out here who are using the kids as extortion. They don't get access to their children. There are men that have never seen their children for years. I think someone in my group said it's been 6 years since they've seen their fucking children. And they pay their child support and alimony. But there's no law that says that you have to give that man access to his children.
There's no enforcement of the visitation. They just care about the financial part of it. The state will garnish your wages. They'll go into your checkbook. They'll do they'll get that money. Believe me.
They will. And
they will get that money.
It's $1 billion industry to the point that it's a machine. The states live off this money. They love this money because they take their own cut of it.
Exactly.
Support fatherhood. Create a White House Council on the status of boys and men. We've had all these books written in the last 5 years, like yours and others, where it's like, hey, men are in trouble, and people, and it almost is that the Democratic Party is so infected with feminism that they can't say, and the bashing of men, they can't say anything good to support men, or otherwise they're betraying women.
Yeah.
And this is the problem with that scarcity mindset. A rising tide lifts all boats. If you lift men, they can afford to build families, they can give women children, they can afford to raise those families, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't, women don't start families because women don't ask a man out. The starting of a family comes from one simple thing. A man sees a beautiful woman and asks her out. Women don't usually ask men out unless they're chads. So men start families. If a woman wants to have family and children, men have to start them and be able to start them. We initiate the whole process of asking a woman out, and thereby, and it's been qualified that there was some data or study that came out from Psychology Today, I think it was, that basically when men get the ability to raise a family, they get the money and they get the resources, they will choose the woman closest to them that will do that with them. They don't go, hey, I want to go shop for Victoria's Secret models, our version of Chads. They don't go, hey, I want to, spend the next 5 years with a list 5 miles long to date. No, they find the nearest woman. And a lot of women were so upset when that data came out because they're like, wait, we're trying to position ourselves and you're telling us that men pick the closest woman to them that's available to raise a family with? They lost their shit on TikTok over that data. Because they're like, you mean that men just grab up whoever? And yep, pretty much. Men are fixers. We figure they're like, hey, this woman seems like, she's into me and I can make this work and I'm a man. That's the beautiful part of what we do. But it almost seems like the Republican or the Democratic Party can't say anything good about men because then somehow they're betraying women. And that's not how any of this should work.
Yeah.
Women need men need women. We're designed to complement each other. We are both two different puzzle pieces that fit beautifully together. Mm-hmm. And without
no two puzzle pieces are the same either. They're all different. So everyone needs to find the person. And it's so hard now because people are so different. There's just so many different mentalities out there. Like you say, the traditional mentality, if a lot of people don't have that anymore, it's hard. It's hard for people. It
definitely is hard. I mean, men see the Chad chasing. All the guys in my group see the Chad chasing. I even had, and there's kind of a narrative too that a large part of men are ugly because women it used to be that women and men lived in a locale. So they lived in small townville, Leavittville, whatever you want to call it. And the only people you would see are the people in that town. And so men would meet women and women would meet men and go, he's not, the best looking Brad Pitt guy in the world that I see in the magazine cover, but, he's what I have access to. So they would make families and everybody would live happily ever after. Now women can have access to all these different men. They can get access to the hottest men's DMs. And so they go and chase that. And men are seeing it. They're seeing that these guys don't have to pay for dates. They see they don't have to pay for anything. They see the basically, just running up the game on body counts, and men are like, we know we can't make a family with these women because their pair bonding is broken. You have women crying now on TikTok that are like, I did hot girl summer and now I can't fall in love anymore. I don't feel anything over sex. And it's because you ignored the oldest rule in the book of humanity that as a woman, femininity is measured by how it's preserved, not how it's flagrantly thrown in the trash. Women start at the top of the mountain. Men start at the bottom. Men are nothing. Women are everything when they're young. And femininity is measured by how far it falls from the top of the mountain. Men are measured by how well they climb that mountain. And And so, yeah, there needs to be more respect for what men do. It doesn't need to be like women have to go back to the kitchen. This isn't that discussion. But, we need to, women can have jobs. Women can work, do what they want. They can fulfill, their thing. If they don't want a man, God bless them. Knock yourself out.
Yeah.
But,
by the way, I think there's something interesting, a comparison in the job market. You just talked about the dating market, how it went from like a city to now to apps where everyone's on the app, and all of a sudden you're competing against 10,000 people instead of 10. Yeah. Same thing with jobs, I think, with LinkedIn. And I think this also kind of ties into some of the frustration that young men are having, because now when you apply for a job, instead of you're applying to the local company that maybe 10, 20 people around at the local schools are also applying to, say, your first job out of college or something. Now you're competing with everyone in the world. Oh, you want to work at this company, at this kind of cool job? Everyone in the world is applying for. I know some people at tech companies, and they say, "Yeah, we released a job now, and within 2 days, we have thousands and thousands of applicants." I know people who have had to get jobs recently. They're going through they have to apply to hundreds and hundreds, well-qualified people apply to hundreds and hundreds of jobs, and sometimes they're not even finding a job. So it's the dating market and the job market. I think there's a parallel there.
Yeah, but the dating market, they can get calls from guys in Dubai. I mean, they're called the Dubai. They're called the Dubai girls. The fly girls is what they call them. And so these guys will pay these women to fly over to Dubai. And of course, it's not what you think it is. They usually, you're going to be passed around to the prince's friends. And so there's all sorts of debauchery. I mean, the stories I just can't even repeat on the show. But, men see women doing it, and they're like, I don't want anything to do with that, what women are doing. I don't want to, women can see these chads, in different states and stuff, and they go chase them. And men are smart. We're logical and reasonable. We don't operate on emotion. So we sit and we go, well, we can't chase chads. Our version of chads is Victoria's Secret. And we're smart enough to know that there's very few of them. So we're not going to chase them. We're going to analyze them a little bit, but we're going to chase them. We're not going to chase them because we know we can't get them. We're going to go for what we want. Men will chase a 4 if they know where they are on the 1 to 10 scale. They'll chase a 4 if they know they're a 6. They'll be like, I need to get a woman who's in my range. But every woman nowadays tells me they're all 10s. Like, I did a poll the other day that just made me fall off my chair. I don't know why I was surprised, but I did a poll in my dating group. How many of you are not a 10? Everyone was a fucking 10. And I was just like, and these are women that are anywhere from age 20 to 65 plus, right? And a lot of them are menopause, and they all think they're 10s. And I was just, are you kidding me? Do you know how narcissists? And the other thing, the problem that men have had too, is that with social media, one of the dark things that have come out of it, and women embracing acting as masculine because they don't have men in their lives, is women have developed the dark triads. So the dark triad traits, if you understand them, they're kind of something that women have always sought. This is why women will chase hybristophilia. If you've ever studied hybristophilia, why were women marrying and chasing men who are on death row, right? Who are killers, who are criminals, right? Why do women chase these types of men? Hybristophilia. It's because of dark triad traits: the psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and narcissism. Now, as a healthy masculine male, it's okay to have some of that. And I try and balance mine because I definitely have a lot of narcissism and probably Machiavellianism and probably a lot of psychopathy, really. Well, this is going, he's really psycho. 16 years, people. But it's good to have a healthy balance of that. But you need to have that because women are attracted to it, and also makes you more successful, and it's very masculine. But there also is an unhealthy point of going too far. Like I call Donald Trump a very unhealthy masculine man. And his narcissism malignant narcissism is so extreme, he doesn't care about anybody. It's okay to be narcissistic but care about people and have some empathy still, where you're not just devoid of it. But a lot of women have developed that with social media. They've got 100 of these simps that were raised in a school that emasculated them, worship them every day, every minute, and they can't get to a point where they can be with one man anymore because they're used to having 500 simps in their emails telling them good morning, good night, everything they ever want, serving them and stuff. They're like, why do I need a man in my life? And they can't handle it if there's only one. They're so broken. And so women have developed, and this is all stats. You can find this on probably Psychology Today. Women have become more narcissistic as they become more masculine. It just plays into it, right? If you're more masculine, you're going to develop the dark triad traits. You just are, because that's how men are. That's how we are as a meritocracy. So women have developed that through social media and all the worshiping they get, and the problem is they can't get out of their experience in the thing, and they just see men as like tools. They really have become men, and so we really have, and they think that they can't figure out why men aren't attracted to them anymore. Anyway. So yeah, I think I still hold a lot of the values of the Democratic Party, but I just realized that after Hillary and Harris being forced on us, not giving a chance for the good talent to rise to the top, and the fact that it's just become the party of feminism, and now we have you can basically call the Republicans the party of manosphere. The other thing that's interesting, I don't know if you've seen the stats on this, but we've basically flipped the parties. So it used to be the GOP was the party of the billionaires and the millionaires and people who made over $100,000. And we were the party of everybody. It's flipped if you look at the numbers. You know who we won with? People who make over 100,000. We are now, or I'm not a Democrat anymore. I don't know why I'm saying it that way. We are now, the Democrats now are the elitist party. It used to be it was the other way around. But if you look at the numbers, we won on people who made 100,000 or more. But we lost the average Joe. Yeah,
the big union didn't endorse Democrats for the first time. And they said, I saw an interview with him, I think it was on 60 Minutes, and he said, a lot of our members aren't Democrats anymore, so we've been asked to not endorse Democrats anymore, so we're not. And that has typically been the stronghold for the union vote. Has really been the backbone of the Democratic Party for the last however many decades. And so to lose the union endorsement, to have the union head go, he spoke at both the DNC and the RNC, and that was a major shift as well.
Yeah. And all the stuff that Biden did for the unions. I mean, Biden went out to the picket lines. Remember that? It was the first time a president had ever gone out to the picket lines. And, I remember Trump fucking over the union. They were so pissed back under his administration over, I think it was a wage increase or something, or a thing they were having. And he just took a dump on them and left them hanging. And, we don't get anything for that. But that's how far the needle has moved. Yeah. And to see Pelosi was, and I have respect for Speaker Pelosi, but to see her, she came out, I think it was New York Times or Washington Post or something, but she did a thing where she's basically, this really isn't a repudiation of her party. This really isn't, it's a fluke. It's a one-off, to see that starting out. That was the other reason you know what, I'm leaving. I'm going to leave because I want you to feel the pain. And I want you to know that I'm over here as an independent. And if you want my vote, you can get it. I'm probably not going to vote for anything over on the other side. But, I can see men's issues. I can see men's problems. I can see why people feel family is important. Because it is. It's without family, we die as an empire. And if you're not familiar with what's going on in Japan, in China now, with the declining population, most of Europe's going to disappear. Germany, fucking gone in, 10, 20 years? Because they're all in this economic decline where men are making families, women are making families, there's not enough children, there's not enough new population to replace the aging oldest population. England has this problem. They can barely afford their pensioners. I believe they've had to cut back the pensioners. And these are people who invest in the system and build the system. What the fuck? We don't get our money now? And sure as shit, if you've read Project 25, the Republicans are going after entitlements, which means Social Security, Medicare, all those sort of shit. They're going to go after, like there's men right now who voted for Trump this week or this last week that are going, I don't have to worry about them taking away Obamacare. I have ADA insurance. There's an ADA insurance, or it's whatever it is. It's what it's really called instead of Obamacare. And a lot of them don't realize they're going to lose their Obamacare insurance. And they're like, wait, what? What are they?
Yeah, they didn't understand. Yeah, Affordable Care Act. They're like, so that's, don't take it as long as,
A lot of these young men I talked to in gaming that voted for Trump and supported him in this round, They're all the men who are disaffected. They can't date women, afford to date women, or they just don't care. They just don't want to invest their money. The one guy that I mentioned that has a truck and the Corvette and goes to racetracks all the time, he's living his best goddamn fucking life. At 20, I'm kind of jealous of him. I was chasing women around, spending all my money on women. He's living his best life. He's buying, $2,000 rims, and he's having a good old time. And he just looks at it and just goes, I have no interest in dating women. I have no interest in losing my money. I'm just going to spend it on me and have a good time. And all he's doing is mirroring what women have done. I'm not going to get married and settle down. I'm going to spend it on me till I'm 40 and then maybe go looking for a thing. And so I can't blame him. I'm just like, what? And these guys don't care about American idealism. They don't care about the Marshall Plan. They don't care about the influence that actually, if you understand it, keeps us safe in this world.
Yeah.
We do have the advantage of having two oceans that separate us from most of the world, but that's not full safety. Our ability to, as a Navy, since World War II, to make shipping lanes accessible, to police the environment, people don't realize how much that has created safety at home. And if you go away from that, if you embrace authoritarianism, fascism, if we're like, hey, we're friends with Trump now or Putin now, and stuff, if you end the war in Ukraine with Ukraine losing, they don't care about any of that shit. They don't care about democracy. You talked about the Constitution. They don't give a shit about the Constitution. The Federalist Papers, why all of this was created, they don't give a shit. They don't care. They got a boner that they voted for a masculine alpha male, and they're going to win, and they're probably going to, I think there's a little bit of feeling they're going to get women back for all these years. And that's not a healthy mindset.
Not at all.
Men and women need to come together instead of being apart and pushing each other away. We need to go.
Exactly.
We need to hold hands. We need to build something together. And I don't see the Democratic Party waking up to that anytime soon.
I hope so. I have been told. I've got various reactions to my book. Some very positive, and some people just say I'm naive. Like they'll never do this. They're so entrenched against supporting anything for men or boys. They will just never do it. Yeah,
that's the reason I left. That's the reason I left the Democratic Party, went to be an independent. I'm like, they got to lose 2 or 3 of these more elections. They've got to go into the fucking wilderness like the Republicans did after Nixon and just fucking get pounded for a while and then come to their senses. And by then it might be too late. I don't know that we're going to have another vote. I really don't. I hear all these people go, we'll get them next time. There's not going to be a next time. Read Project 2025. Understand what they're doing. Study fascism and authoritarianism. It doesn't come back. If they win the House, they're going to enact that a president they're going to do the same thing the Duma did, the Russian Duma legislature did. They're just going to enact all these powers where he can live forever as president, never be removed from office. Sure, he'll have some sort of fake vote bullshit. And then now he wants to muck with the Fed. You ever seen the thing with wants to do with the Fed? That's what every authoritarian does. Look at Venezuela. Yeah. The first thing you do is they disable the Fed and they start mucking with it. Russia doesn't even run its Fed. It does Fed rates on its own, and I think he's smart enough to know to monkey with it, with Putin. But he wants to run the Fed. And once he starts monkeying with all that shit,
our economy could just go to...
Well, we're going to collapse. The inflation, that's the other thing we should have brought up on the top of the show. The inflation has already started. So these people voted for him because we had inflation from COVID, which is pretty natural to have happen for what we went through.
Yeah, we put how many trillions of dollars of quantitative easing into the market, of course, and then plus it was scarcity because all the shipping was closed and everything. And guess what? Prices went up.
Yeah, you're going to have prices. I can't say that Biden should have went after the companies that were grossly overpricing on purpose. They have documentation of it now that boardrooms sat around and said, hey, we can get away with this for a while. Let's just jack up our pricing. McDonald's and companies did it so high to get more profit. They fucked themselves. They've had to reduce prices now. But yeah, it's. I don't see this changing for 2 or 3 cycles unless the Democratic Party gets really fucking honest with the data.
I'm going to try to get him to change it sooner. There's a big world with a lot of people with a lot of ideas. It's hard to cut through the noise of stuff. Mm-hmm. But if this election doesn't make the Democrats sit back and reassess, they're going to try it again in 4 more years and just have the same outcome.
Yeah. They're
don't
going to
know.
be in the wilderness for a while unless they start conversing about what you've talked about in your book. Give us a final pitch on your book as we go out. Tell people where to buy it, and of course .coms, et cetera, et cetera.
Cool. So again, the name of my book is called How Democrats Can Win Back Men. And my name is Mark W. Sutton. The best place to find that is on Amazon. So just go to Amazon and find the book there. My website is mark-sutton.com. And then I've also got a Substack, Men and the 2024 Election. You can find that link on the website as well. So those are the places. And I've got, feel free to email me. I got my email on my website too, but it's mark@mark-sutton.com. I'd love to hear from anyone who has any thoughts or comments or, wants to get involved.
We need to get you on CNN and MSNBC and all the news outlets too. Thank you very much, Mark, for coming on. And my message to my audience is we need to think in abundance in this country, whether it comes to men and women or immigrants or anything. A rising tide lifts all boats. That's what made this country great. We all worked together. We were all Americans. We were all against the Russians. And that's what made this country great. And fighting each other as men and women, we are tied together biologically for the propagation of the species and for the survival of the species. We're tied together. We're complements to each other. We can't live without each other. And this whole thing has to stop, because all I see is the Democrats are now the party of women and the Republicans are the party of men. And it's now men versus women. And I find that just disgusting. I want to puke.
It's not good for our society. It's not good for our country. And it's been building for 40 years. This didn't happen yesterday.
It didn't happen overnight. Yeah.
No.
They like you said, Josh Hawley wrote that faux book on masculinity. What a joke. He was running from the January 6th thing that he caused. That guy's the last masculine man in the world. And, they courted it. And like I say, I think Professor, what's his name? Goodman, I think he nailed it, And Joe Rogan, 55 million men, mostly men, probably watched that podcast with him and Elon Musk the night before the election, and they turned up to vote. The other thing too is I still want to know is how come women didn't show up to vote? Where were they? And the other thing
that's shocking.
Where is the Taylor Swift vote? I've been yelling about that on social media. Where's the Taylor Swift vote? Because they went and registered. We know they registered. Like the register company that Taylor Swift put out for her audience, they all went and registered to vote. They had explosive registration. But just like Hillary Clinton in 2016, a lot of them don't seem to have shown up to vote. I guess we'll get the final count here eventually. But I really want to know where those numbers are. I want to know what happened. Because the part of the reason I'm angry about all the men bashing that's going on TikTok right now and social media, blaming them for this, is where were those women? Where the Taylor Swift vote was supposed to win it?
It would have been at least would have been a lot closer, even if it hadn't been. But that is another thing I said in one of my blog posts I wrote. Regardless of who wins this election, if Trump wins, men will be blamed. Period. Like the Democrats will blame men, and I just knew that was going to happen. It's not, like you said, it's not shocking. It's that was going to happen.
I went through it with Hillary, and I'm just like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not having men blamed for everything again. Take your sisterhood. A lot of women actually voted. The Gaza, Israel, Hamas crowd of the far left woke part of our party that's so militant, they voted for Trump, and they voted for Jill Stein. That's who they voted for.
Jill Stein too.
It is a protest vote. There goes your women's causes. Way to go, dumbass. You shot yourself in the foot. But they did it because they were like, Hamas are good people. You're like, what? But, hold those people accountable. There are 52% of, I think, white women in America voted for Donald Trump. And I think a lot of those converted from Democrats, too. Because women will vote for a masculine man. They'll vote for a leader. They don't trust women to lead. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. There's lots of great women leaders in the world. Germany's Merkel prime minister, and there's been a lot of great women in the world. So there's no problem with that. But if I can't convince women to vote for other women, what the fuck? So I just want accountability. But, God knows we can't clean up our own house. Anyway, thanks for coming on the show, Mark. I appreciate it. I remember sitting in election night going, Jesus Christ, I got to call Mark. And you nailed it.
Thank you for having me. I wish it had come out, differently. I wish the Democrats had at least given themselves a better chance by just focusing on the other half of the voter base. But maybe next time.
But you know what? I think they're just going to go double down on women, and they're just going to put forth another woman leader. And like I said, women won't vote for other women. They're just so catty and competitive. You know, I've heard it since Hillary. I talked to a lot of women over Hillary over the last 10 years or something, 8 years. And a lot of them were like, yeah, I'm a woman. I don't trust a woman to lead the office. It's the highest thing in the thing. I don't like other women. You know, you're like, what did you like about Hillary? I just didn't like her. You know, I don't like other women. And you're like, do you want,
Wow.
what do you want? So anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Order up his book wherever fine books are sold so that you can take and check them out. Education is so important. And, you know, like I said, a lot of these young men that voted, they don't give a shit about any of it. Constitution, democracy, they don't give a shit. They just want to pay their bills and get laid and start a family. They just want to be men, and they don't want to be abused anymore. They're tired. I'm tired of it. I can't turn on social media without being assaulted as a man, and I can't think what a 5-year-old or 8-year-old or 10-year-old boy goes through. I mean, he has no sort of callous to that sort of nature. Anyway, how Democrats can win back men. That's probably more prominent than ever now. How Democrats can win back men. Why understanding male voters and their issues is vital for Democratic victory. Out June 26, 24. The man who saw it all, Mark W. Sutton. You may be one of the few, actually. You need to do it too, or like, I'm the guy who called it, and I told you, and you might want to listen to me next time, eh? Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. Sorry we went a little long.